The 7 Buddhist lessons to stop chasing happiness and just be in every corner of the world. Human beings are engaged in the same endless pursuit, the search for happiness. We run towards success, relationships, recognition, and possessions, believing that somewhere, somehow, joy is waiting for us just beyond the next goal. Yet in the quiet moments of our lives, when everything seems to pause, a silent realization emerges. The more we chase happiness, the farther it seems to move away. Buddhism offers a radically different approach, one that does not seek happiness as an external object, but as a natural consequence of presence, awareness, and acceptance. This is not about becoming indifferent to life, but about learning to see life as it truly is, without distortion, without attachment. In Buddhist wisdom, the concept of happiness is not something to be captured or owned. It is a state that arises when the mind is still, when desires are understood rather than obeyed, and when one's heart becomes aligned with the rhythm of the universe. The Buddha taught that the root of all suffering is tanha, craving, the constant thirst to make things different from what they are. The modern world feeds this thirst with every advertisement, every social expectation, every digital notification telling us we are not enough yet, that we must do more, get more, and be more. But the Buddhist path invites us to stop running. It teaches us to look inward, to return to the present, and to awaken to the simple truth that happiness cannot be chased because it was never lost. To just be is one of the hardest lessons to learn in a culture addicted to doing. But it is also the most liberating one, to sit quietly, breathing in the reality of this very moment, and realizing that peace has always been available. This is the beginning of awakening. These 7 lessons from Buddhism will help you dissolve the illusion of pursuit and rediscover the still joy that has been waiting in the silence of your own being. The illusion of happiness as a destination. The first lesson Buddhism teaches about happiness is perhaps the most paradoxical. Happiness is not the goal. In fact, making it a goal ensures you will never truly find it. The more we fixate on being happy, the more we reinforce the idea that something is missing, that happiness exists somewhere outside of us, dependent on external circumstances. This illusion keeps us trapped in an endless cycle of desire and disappointment. Buddha understood that suffering, dukkha, arises from attachment, from clinging to the idea that life should be different from how it is. When we chase happiness, we are, in essence, rejecting the present moment. We are saying, this is not enough. I need something else to feel complete. That resistance becomes the very source of our suffering. Instead of experiencing life as it unfolds, we live in anticipation of a future that never comes exactly as imagined. The chase itself becomes our prison. The modern world amplifies this delusion. We are taught to believe that happiness will come with the next achievement, the next relationship, the next purchase. We scroll through curated images of others' lives and measure our worth against illusions. But Buddhism cuts through that noise with a single insight. Happiness cannot be pursued, it can only be revealed. It is not created by adding something new to your life. It is uncovered by letting go of what clouds your awareness of the present. When we believe happiness is something to be reached, we place it in the future, and therefore we separate ourselves from it. The Buddha once said, "Do not dwell in the past, do not dream of the future, concentrate the mind on the present moment." This teaching does not reject the idea of joy, but shows that joy exists only here and now. The mind that stops searching discovers that it was already standing on sacred ground. The illusion of happiness as a destination is deeply tied to the ego. The ego thrives on goals, comparisons, and achievements. It tells you that once you become someone better, more spiritual, more successful, more loved, you will finally arrive. But the truth is, the ego cannot enter the state of peace because it depends on tension to survive. The chase keeps the ego alive, but it keeps you asleep. To dissolve this illusion, Buddhism encourages mindfulness, the practice of observing thoughts, feelings, and sensations without attachment. When you notice yourself craving happiness, pause. Watch the desire arise. See how it moves and fades. Realize that the observer, the awareness behind all thoughts, is already free, already whole. You begin to understand that happiness was never outside of you. It was the silence observing the search itself. Imagine sitting by a still lake. The surface reflects the sky perfectly when undisturbed. But the moment you stir the water, the reflection disappears. In the same way, the more the mind stirs with desires and fears, the less clearly it perceives the peace that is already there. Happiness is not a wave to be chased across the surface. It is the clarity that emerges when the water becomes still. True freedom comes when you stop running after what you think will make you happy, and instead rest in what is. The more you understand this, the lighter you become. You begin to notice the beauty of small things, the breath entering and leaving your body, the sunlight filtering through leaves, the quiet pulse of existence itself. Life stops being a means to an end and becomes an expression of being. When you release the illusion that happiness lies somewhere else, you begin to experience a deep, quiet joy that does not depend on conditions. You stop asking life to give you what you want, and you start receiving what it offers. That acceptance, pure and unconditional, becomes the foundation of inner peace. And so, the first lesson of Buddhism in letting go of the chase is this: happiness cannot be found because it was never lost. The search itself is the barrier. Stop running, sit, breathe, be. You will discover that joy was never in the things you were running toward. It was in the awareness that was running all along. If you are finding meaning in this reflection, remember to subscribe to the channel to continue this journey through Buddhist wisdom and inner awakening. Desire, the endless fire that consumes peace. Desire is at the heart of the human experience. It is what moves civilizations, inspires art, fuels ambition, and gives birth to innovation. Yet it is also what keeps us restless, unsatisfied, and endlessly longing for more. In Buddhism, desire is described as the fire of craving, an inner flame that, when left unobserved, consumes the peace within the heart. It promises satisfaction, but the satisfaction it brings is as fleeting as smoke. The more we feed it, the stronger it burns. The Buddha identified this craving, tanha, as the root of all suffering. But understanding this does not mean that one must reject all of life's experiences. It means learning to see the nature of desire clearly, so it no longer controls us. To stop chasing happiness, we must first see how the mind's thirst creates the illusion that happiness is something to be pursued rather than discovered. In the modern world, desire has taken new and sophisticated forms. It is no longer merely a longing for food, shelter, or companionship. It is a subtle and constant hunger for stimulation. Every sound, every image, every notification on a phone is a spark that ignites the craving for more. We become addicted to the next moment, the next message, the next validation. The result is a continuous state of agitation, an inability to rest in the stillness of the present. The mind, conditioned by desire, behaves like a monkey jumping from branch to branch, never satisfied, never still. In this restless dance, peace becomes almost impossible because peace requires presence, and desire pulls the mind away from presence into endless becoming. The Buddha often compared desire to salt water. The more you drink, the thirstier you become. This simple metaphor captures the essence of craving perfectly. When we obtain what we want, the pleasure is momentary. Soon after, the mind starts looking for the next object of desire, the next source of satisfaction. The satisfaction is temporary, but the craving renews itself endlessly. This is the wheel of samsara, the cycle of desire and dissatisfaction that keeps human beings trapped in suffering. It is not the object of desire that causes pain, but the attachment to it, the belief that one cannot be whole without it. When the mind believes happiness lies in the future, it postpones peace indefinitely. But desire is not the enemy. It becomes destructive only when it is unconscious. When we see desire clearly, we can begin to transform it. In Buddhism, this transformation comes through mindfulness and insight. When a craving arises, whether it's for comfort, approval, or possession, the practice is to pause and observe. Instead of reacting automatically, we bring awareness to the sensation of wanting. What does it feel like in the body? Where does it live? In the chest, in the stomach, in the throat? When we look deeply, we realize that desire is simply energy. It arises, peaks, and fades. It has no substance beyond the thoughts that feed it. The more we observe, the more it loses its power to dictate our behavior. This is liberation through awareness. In the fire sermon, Adittapariyaya Sutta, the Buddha declared, "The world is burning." He was not speaking of literal flames, but of the fires of greed, hatred, and delusion that consume human consciousness. Every sense experience, he said, is a flame, with the fire of passion, with the fire of aversion, with the fire of ignorance. The first step to extinguishing this fire is to see it. When we chase after pleasant experiences, believing they will bring lasting happiness, we are adding fuel to the flames. When we resist unpleasant experiences, we feed the same fire. Peace arises not by controlling life's circumstances, but by seeing the fire without feeding it. The nature of desire is endless expansion. When one desire is fulfilled, another arises. We tell ourselves, "Just this one thing, and I'll be happy." But once it's attained, the satisfaction fades, and the cycle begins again. It's as if the mind were programmed to look for reasons to be discontent. This endless seeking is not a sign of failure, but a reflection of the mind's ignorance. The mind believes that fulfillment lies in the future, not realizing that the very act of seeking creates the sense of lack it is trying to escape. It's a paradox that becomes clear only when we stop chasing and start watching. To stop being consumed by desire, Buddhism offers the middle path, not indulgence, not suppression, but awareness. Indulgence strengthens craving. Suppression creates inner conflict. Awareness transforms both. When you observe a desire without judgment, you see its impermanent nature. You see it rise, linger, and dissolve. In that moment of pure observation, the desire loses its grip. You realize you are not the craving. You are the awareness in which craving appears. This insight is profoundly liberating because it cuts the root of suffering. The fire burns out not by force, but by lack of fuel. Modern society thrives on keeping desire alive. The entire machinery of consumerism depends on your dissatisfaction. Every advertisement whispers that you are incomplete, that you need something more to feel whole. This manipulation of desire keeps the collective mind restless, anxious, and easy to control. Buddhism invites rebellion against this illusion, not through anger or withdrawal, but through awakening. When you see the game, you stop playing. You can still enjoy what life offers, a meal, a sunset, a conversation, but you no longer depend on them for happiness. They become expressions of joy, not its conditions. There is a subtle but profound difference between desire and intention. Desire is rooted in lack. Intention is rooted in presence. Desire says, "I want this to complete me." Intention says, "This action expresses my completeness." When your actions arise from awareness rather than craving, they are no longer driven by anxiety. They flow naturally, effortlessly, in harmony with the unfolding of life. The Buddha lived this truth. He walked, ate, taught, and rested without resistance, fully present in each act. His life was not a rejection of the world, but a demonstration of how to live in it without being enslaved by it. The danger of desire is not in wanting itself, but in believing that satisfaction can be found through accumulation. The mind's habit of chasing pleasure and avoiding pain creates a pendulum that never stops swinging. Pleasure arises, we cling to it. Pain arises, we resist it. Both actions bind us to the cycle of suffering. The key is equanimity, a deep balance that allows both pleasure and pain to pass without disturbing the stillness of the heart. This balance is not cold detachment, but profound peace. It is the recognition that joy and sorrow are two movements of the same ocean, and the ocean itself, awareness, remains untouched. When you begin to live without clinging, life starts to unfold in unexpected beauty. You find joy not in getting what you want, but in appreciating what is. The morning light through the window, the rhythm of your breath, the taste of tea. These small things become miracles when the mind is quiet. You realize that happiness is not an achievement, but a natural fragrance of awareness. It does not need to be chased because it is what remains when the noise of craving fades. The Buddha's teaching on the Four Noble Truths begins with an acknowledgement of suffering. Life, he said, involves dukkha, a deep, existential unsatisfactoriness. But this truth is not pessimistic, it is compassionate. By recognizing suffering, we stop pretending that endless pursuit will bring peace. We see the cause, craving, and the possibility of its end, nirvana. Nirvana is not a place or an achievement. It is the extinguishing of the fires of desire, aversion, and ignorance. It is the coolness that comes when the flames have gone out. In that stillness, the heart knows a joy deeper than pleasure and a peace stronger than comfort. To stop chasing happiness, we must understand that desire, by its very nature, is insatiable, but awareness is infinite. When we live from awareness instead of craving, we begin to taste a different kind of happiness, one that does not depend on conditions. This is not a joy that comes and goes, but an unshakable peace that underlies all experience. The paradox of life is that when you stop trying to be happy, happiness quietly enters, uninvited, and fills the space where resistance used to live. Think of desire as a visitor knocking on your door. If you let it in blindly, it takes over your house. If you try to lock it out, it keeps knocking louder. But if you open the door, greet it with awareness, and watch it come and go, it loses its power. Each time you do this, you strengthen the space of observation, the inner stillness. Eventually, you realize that no desire can disturb the peace that is your true nature. This understanding transforms daily life. When you eat, you eat. When you walk, you walk. When you work, you work. No longer driven by an inner hunger for something more, you act with clarity and simplicity. Your joy no longer depends on outcomes. Success and failure, gain and loss, praise and blame, they all come and go like the weather, but the sky of awareness remains clear and vast. This is freedom. This is the happiness that cannot be chased because it was never absent. The Buddha did not ask us to renounce the world, but to see through its illusions. The problem is not the presence of desire, but the identification with it. When you see desire without attachment, you can enjoy the play of life without being consumed by it. You become like a lotus growing in muddy water, touched by the world but not stained by it. This is the true art of living, to participate fully in life while remaining anchored in peace. Many people fear that without desire, life will lose meaning. But the opposite is true. When the fires of craving die down, what remains is a quiet, radiant clarity. You begin to act not out of need, but out of love. You care for others not because you want something in return, but because compassion naturally arises from stillness. You create not to prove yourself, but because creation is a joyful expression of being. In the absence of grasping, everything becomes sacred. The ordinary becomes miraculous. As you continue to practice mindfulness, you will notice how subtle desire can be. It hides behind thoughts like, "I wish this meditation were deeper," or "I hope I stay calm all day." Even the desire to be free of desire is still desire. But do not be discouraged. Awareness is patient. Each time you notice the craving, you weaken its hold. Each time you return to the present, you strengthen the peace within. Gradually, the mind learns to rest, and the heart remembers its original stillness. In that stillness, happiness is no longer something to be found. It is what you are. It shines through every breath, every movement, every silence. You stop running because there is nowhere to go. Life as it is becomes enough. This is the great freedom that Buddhism points to, not a life without feeling, but a life lived in full awareness of what is real. If this teaching resonates with you and you wish to continue exploring the path to true inner peace, remember to subscribe to the channel and join this ongoing journey through Buddhist wisdom, presence, and awakening. The peace beyond control. Letting life unfold naturally. There is a deep and subtle illusion woven into the human mind. The belief that peace can be achieved through control. From childhood, we are taught that the world responds to effort, that the more we plan, manage, and manipulate, the more happiness we can secure. But in the Buddhist view, this very tendency to control is the silent seed of suffering. The desire to control is another form of craving, a refusal to trust the flow of reality. It is the hidden belief that life, as it is not enough, that it must be bent, shaped, or forced to match our preferences. And so we spend our days trying to fix, improve, and arrange everything, our work, our relationships, our emotions, our thoughts, never realizing that peace is not found in perfect order, but in perfect acceptance. Buddhism teaches that the mind's need to control arises from ignorance, from a mistaken identity between the self and the flow of life. We think we are separate from the world, standing outside of it, directing and managing it. But the truth is that we are part of the same movement. The breath you take, the beating of your heart, the rising and setting of the sun, all are expressions of one continuous unfolding. When you fight this flow, you create inner friction. When you surrender to it, you rediscover peace. The practice of letting go of control does not mean becoming passive or careless. It means acting from wisdom rather than fear. It means allowing things to be what they are, without adding resistance to what you cannot change. The Buddha's life itself was an example of this balance between intention and surrender. He walked from village to village, teaching with compassion, yet he never clung to results. He offered the Dharma, but he did not demand that anyone listen. He understood that life's outcomes were not his to command. This is the essence of peace, to act fully, to give your best, and to let go of what lies beyond your reach. When we release control, we step into harmony with the universe instead of trying to direct it. In the modern world, this lesson has become even more urgent. We live in a culture obsessed with optimization, productivity, and self-improvement. Every moment must be maximized, every weakness fixed, every future secured. But this relentless control creates anxiety rather than peace. The mind becomes a battlefield of shoulds and musts, constantly comparing reality with some imagined version of perfection. This is the source of inner tension. The more you try to hold life still, the more it slips through your fingers. Like trying to hold water in a clenched fist, the tighter you grasp, the less you have. Letting go does not mean giving up. It means loosening the grip of fear. Fear is what drives control. Fear of loss, fear of change, fear of uncertainty. But uncertainty is the nature of existence. Everything changes. The seasons, the body, the mind, even the stars. When we resist this truth, we suffer. The Buddha called this impermanence anicca, one of the fundamental marks of existence. To live in peace is to live in harmony with impermanence. It means to trust the natural unfolding of events, to know that every moment, pleasant or painful, has its place in the great tapestry of being. This trust is not blind faith, it is the result of deep insight. When you observe your life carefully, you see that many things that once seemed terrible led to unexpected growth. You see that every disappointment opened a new path, every ending became a beginning. This realization weakens the illusion of control. You begin to see that life has its own intelligence, one greater than the small plans of the mind. The more you align with this intelligence, the less you struggle. You stop forcing outcomes and start cooperating with the natural rhythm of existence. Meditation is the practice that reveals this truth directly. When you sit in silence and observe your thoughts, you notice how the mind tries to control even the present moment. It judges, plans, resists, and reacts. You may think, "I should be calmer," or "Why am I distracted?" But gradually, as you watch without interfering, something shifts. You begin to see that thoughts arise and dissolve on their own. The breath moves without your effort. Life unfolds even when you stop managing it. This is a profound discovery. Existence does not need your control to function perfectly. The rivers flow, the stars move, the body breathes, all without your command. When you realize this, an immense relief fills the heart. You can finally rest. Letting go of control is not an act of weakness, it is an act of wisdom. It means you no longer believe the mind's illusion that everything depends on your will. You still act, but from a place of flow rather than resistance. You become like a dancer moving with the rhythm of life instead of trying to direct the music. This way of living is effortless because it is natural. It does not mean abandoning responsibility. It means understanding that your responsibility is to act consciously, not to control outcomes. The rest belongs to the universe. One of the most liberating teachings of Buddhism is the understanding of dependent origination, pratyasamutpada. It reveals that all phenomena arise through countless causes and conditions. Nothing exists in isolation. This means that what happens is the result of infinite interconnected factors beyond our control. To think we can manage every detail of life is to deny this fundamental truth. When you understand dependent origination deeply, you stop demanding that life obey your expectations. Instead, you work with reality as it is, knowing that your influence is part of the whole, not the whole itself. This insight dissolves arrogance and brings humility, a soft openness to whatever arises. In the moment you stop insisting that life conform to your plans, you open a space for peace to enter. The tension leaves your body, the breath deepens. You realize that there is a greater intelligence guiding everything, the same force that makes flowers bloom and waves crash upon the shore. To live in alignment with this intelligence is to live effortlessly. You still make choices, but they arise spontaneously from awareness, not from fear. You act not because you are desperate to change reality, but because action itself is an expression of life moving through you. When you let go of control, relationships also transform. Much of human conflict arises from trying to change others, to make them act, think, or feel the way we want. We say, "If only they would behave differently, I could be happy." But this is another illusion. Just as you cannot control the wind or the rain, you cannot control another person's journey. When you release this need, love becomes pure. You no longer love to gain security or comfort. You love because love is your nature. This kind of love is free from conditions. It accepts others as they are, allowing both yourself and them to grow naturally. The art of letting life unfold does not mean you never face pain. Surrender does not erase difficulty, but it changes your relationship with pain. Instead of resisting, you allow it. You see that pain too arises and passes. By not fighting it, you stop multiplying it. Most suffering is not caused by pain itself, but by the resistance to it. When you accept discomfort fully, it loses its sting. The Buddha taught that the wise person feels the arrow of pain once, while the unwise feels it twice, first from the pain itself, and then from the mind's resistance. Acceptance is what prevents the second arrow. In moments of chaos or uncertainty, remember that control is an illusion born from fear, while surrender is an act of trust in the greater order of things. You can see this in nature. The river does not resist the rocks, it flows around them. The tree bends in the wind instead of breaking. Life always finds balance through flexibility, not rigidity. When you learn to flow with life, your inner storms calm down. You stop fighting what you cannot change and begin to dance with the rhythm of existence. This lesson becomes clearer as we grow older. Life has a way of teaching surrender through experience. The plans that failed, the relationships that ended, the unexpected turns that changed everything, all reveal that we are not in control as much as we thought. At first, this realization may feel frightening, but eventually it becomes liberating. When you stop trying to control everything, you begin to truly live. You start to experience life with curiosity instead of anxiety. You wake up each morning open to what will come, rather than dreading what might go wrong. This openness is the essence of freedom. The greatest masters of peace are not those who have mastered life, but those who have stopped trying to master it. They walk gently through the world, aware of its impermanence, grateful for every breath. They do not cling to plans or resist change. When joy comes, they smile. When sorrow comes, they bow. They trust that everything has its season and that nothing is ever truly lost, only transformed. This trust is the foundation of serenity. To stop chasing happiness, you must stop trying to control the conditions of happiness. Peace does not depend on making life perfect, it depends on letting life be. This shift in perspective changes everything. You no longer wake up asking, "How can I make this day go my way?" Instead, you ask, "How can I meet this day with awareness and grace?" One question creates tension, the other creates flow. The first demands that life obey you, the second allows you to harmonize with life. This is the difference between resistance and peace. The more you practice surrender, the more you discover that life has its own intelligence. You notice small coincidences, moments of timing, gentle nudges that guide you without force. The universe does not shout, it whispers, but you can only hear it when your mind is quiet. When you release control, the noise of the ego fades and the deeper voice of intuition emerges. This inner guidance leads you effortlessly toward what is needed, not what is wanted. It is not logical, but it is wise. Buddhism calls this effortless alignment wu-wei, action without forcing. It is the art of living in tune with the Tao, the natural way of things. When you act in this state, life flows through you like music. You do not struggle to make things happen. You allow them to happen through you. This is how peace and effectiveness coexist. Paradoxically, when you stop trying to control everything, your actions become more powerful because they arise from clarity rather than fear. You no longer waste energy fighting reality. You move with it. The mind may protest. It will say, "If I don't control, everything will fall apart." Nakm. But when you look closely, you see that most of life's beauty has arisen without your control. The most profound experiences, love, insight, inspiration, arrive unannounced. You did not plan them. They happened through grace. This realization softens the heart. You begin to trust that the same force that created the stars also moves through your life. This trust dissolves anxiety. It allows you to breathe, to live, to be. Letting go of control is not a one-time act, but a continuous practice. The ego will keep trying to take the wheel, especially in moments of uncertainty. Each time it does, notice it gently and return to presence. Breathe, feel your feet on the ground. Remember that the earth turns, the heart beats, and the breath flows without your effort. You are held by something vast. When you live from this awareness, the need to control fades naturally. You find peace not in having power, but in trusting the power that already sustains everything. Ultimately, this lesson reveals a truth that words can barely touch. Life itself is the path. You are not separate from the flow you are trying to manage. The wave does not need to control the ocean. It is the ocean. When this understanding dawns, the struggle ends. You move through the world with ease, not because everything is easy, but because you are no longer fighting the current. You live, you breathe, you let go, and in that letting go, you discover the peace that cannot be taken away. If this reflection is helping you open your heart to the calm wisdom of letting life unfold as it must, remember to subscribe to the channel and continue walking this path of awareness, surrender, and inner freedom. Freedom from comparison. The end of measuring yourself against the world. Comparison is one of the most subtle poisons of the human mind. It wears many masks: ambition, insecurity, envy, even inspiration. Yet at its core lies a quiet violence against the self. In Buddhism, comparison is seen as one of the greatest obstacles to inner peace because it pulls the mind away from direct experience and traps it in the web of illusion. The Buddha often spoke about the delusion of self, the idea that we are separate, isolated entities struggling to prove our worth in a world of others. When you compare yourself to someone else, you are strengthening that illusion. You are saying, I am this small self and they are that other self. And thus you separate yourself from the truth of interbeing. In that separation, suffering arises. To chase happiness through comparison is to run toward a mirage. The mind whispers, if only I had what they have. If only I were as successful, as beautiful, as peaceful, as wise, then I would be happy. But this thought contains its own contradiction. The moment you believe happiness depends on something outside of you, especially on being like someone else, you have already abandoned your own center. You are no longer living your life. You are living a shadow of another's. In the Buddhist view, this is a form of ignorance, avidya, the blindness that keeps us wandering in circles through suffering. The modern world magnifies comparison to an almost unbearable degree. Social media has turned life into a theater of endless mirrors, each one reflecting an illusion of perfection. You scroll through images of other people's achievements, vacations, relationships, and carefully edited smiles, and your mind automatically measures itself against them. You do not see the whole truth behind those moments, the fears, the doubts, the loneliness. You see only a mask, and yet you compare your inner world to someone else's outer appearance. No wonder peace feels so distant. The mind becomes trapped in a spiral of inadequacy, always searching for validation, always afraid of being less than others. Buddhism offers a radical antidote to this disease of comparison: awareness and compassion. Awareness shows you that the mind's habit of comparison is automatic, conditioned by years of cultural programming and egoic patterns. You are not to blame for having these thoughts, but you are responsible for seeing them clearly. The moment you observe comparison arising, that subtle thought that says, I am not enough, or I am better than them, you are no longer trapped by it. You are awake. The comparison still happens, but you are watching it rather than being consumed by it. That awareness itself is freedom. Compassion, on the other hand, dissolves the sharp edges of judgment. When you truly understand the suffering that comes from comparison, you begin to feel compassion, not only for yourself, but for everyone else caught in the same trap. You realize that the person you envy is also struggling in their own way, perhaps envying someone else, perhaps hiding their pain behind the same mask of confidence that deceives you. Compassion transforms envy into understanding. You stop competing with others and start connecting with them. This is one of the deepest forms of peace, the peace that arises when you see that no one is your rival, because no one can truly be compared to you. Every being walks a unique path. The conditions that shaped your life, your body, your mind, your experiences, are unlike anyone else's. To compare your journey to another's is like comparing a tree to a river or the moon to the mountain. Each has its purpose, its rhythm, its own form of beauty. The lotus grows in the mud, the eagle soars in the sky. Both are perfect expressions of life. The suffering of comparison comes from forgetting this truth. We forget that our worth is not something to be measured, but something to be realized. It does not depend on others' opinions or accomplishments, but on our alignment with what is real right now. The Buddha taught that clinging to the illusion of self creates duality, self versus other, success versus failure, gain versus loss. The moment this duality arises, comparison follows. To transcend it, one must see through the illusion. You are not a separate fixed entity. You are a process, a flow of consciousness, constantly changing, constantly connected to everything else. The idea of being better or worse than someone else only makes sense if you believe in a fixed self. But once you see that everything is impermanent, fluid, and interdependent, comparison loses its meaning. The ocean does not compare one wave to another. It knows that all are water. Letting go of comparison is not easy. The ego thrives on it. It defines itself by opposition. I am this because I am not that. Without comparison, the ego feels invisible, threatened. That is why the mind resists this teaching so fiercely. It fears that if it stops comparing, it will lose its sense of identity. But what it actually loses is illusion. And what it gains is freedom. You begin to taste a kind of peace that is not dependent on winning or losing, not tied to praise or blame. You no longer need to prove anything. You no longer need to be seen. You are enough, not because you meet some external standard, but because existence itself is enough. When you stop comparing, a new quality of attention arises, one of authenticity. You begin to live your own life rather than performing for others. You listen to your own inner rhythm, to the quiet voice of intuition that has been drowned out by noise. You start creating, working, loving, and serving from sincerity, not from competition. Your actions flow naturally because they are no longer distorted by the need for validation. This authenticity is what the Buddha called right livelihood and right effort, not forced, not driven by ego, but aligned with truth. In daily life, this freedom can transform even the simplest activities. When you walk, you are just walking, not trying to walk as gracefully as someone else. When you meditate, you are just meditating, not comparing your stillness to another's. When you speak, you are not trying to sound wise or impressive. You are simply expressing truth. There is great beauty in this simplicity. It allows you to meet life directly without the distortion of comparison. You become grounded, clear, and peaceful. The root of comparison lies in desire, the desire to be more, to be seen, to be special. But the Buddha's teaching cuts through this illusion with compassion. You do not need to be special. You need to be real. Specialness separates you from others. Reality connects you to them. When you live authentically, you discover that what you were seeking through comparison, love, belonging, recognition, was already present within you as awareness itself. You are not in competition with anyone because there is no other in truth. There is only life expressing itself through infinite forms. In this understanding, even ambition transforms. The Buddhist path does not condemn ambition or goals. It simply asks you to see where they arise from. When ambition arises from insecurity, it leads to exhaustion. But when it arises from love, from the natural desire to express your potential, to serve life, it becomes pure. You can still strive, create, and achieve, but without the poison of comparison. You move from competition to contribution. You no longer climb over others, you lift them with you. This shift is not theoretical. It changes the way you feel in your body and mind. When comparison dominates, the body tightens, the breath becomes shallow, the heart contracts. When you release comparison, the body relaxes, the breath deepens, and the heart opens. You feel a quiet joy that is not dependent on anyone else's story. You begin to appreciate others' success without envy because their light does not diminish yours. You see their beauty as an extension of the same beauty that lives in you. This is true humility, not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. To cultivate this freedom, mindfulness is essential. Each time the mind begins to compare, pause. Notice the sensations that accompany the thought. Do you feel tension in your chest, a heaviness in your stomach, a restlessness in your mind? Bring gentle awareness to it. You will see that comparison is not just a thought, but an energetic contraction, a movement away from presence. When you stay with it without judgment, it begins to dissolve. You realize that peace was never lost. It was only hidden beneath the noise of mental measurement. The Buddha once said, "You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection." This is not self-centeredness, it is self-compassion. When you stop comparing, you begin to truly love yourself, not as an idea, but as a living reality. You love your imperfections because you see them as part of the great unfolding of life. You love your progress and your setbacks equally because both are teachers. This love is not pride, it is acceptance. And in that acceptance, all striving for external validation fades away. Freedom from comparison is the foundation of true happiness. As long as you measure your worth through others, you will remain a slave to their opinions. But when you rest in awareness, no one's praise or criticism can disturb your peace. You become unshakable because your center is within, not outside. This is the meaning of equanimity, upekkha in Pali, a state of serene balance, where the heart remains steady regardless of external winds. It is not indifference but strength born from understanding. Life becomes lighter when you let go of comparison. You laugh more easily, forgive more quickly, and appreciate more deeply. You stop treating yourself as a project to be perfected and start treating yourself as a friend to be understood. Others stop being competitors and become companions on the path. You begin to see that everyone, including you, is doing their best with the consciousness they have. This understanding melts judgment and opens the door to compassion. Imagine a world where people no longer compared, where each person celebrated the uniqueness of others instead of competing against it. Such a world would be filled with creativity, kindness, and genuine connection. But that world begins inside you. Every time you catch yourself comparing and choose instead to appreciate, to see beauty rather than difference, you contribute to that world. Your inner peace becomes a seed of collective peace. When the Buddha attained enlightenment, he did not become better than others. He simply woke up to what had always been true. Enlightenment is not about being above others. It is about being free from the illusion of separation that makes comparison possible. When you glimpse that truth, even for a moment you feel an immense compassion for all beings, those ahead, those behind, and those beside you. You see that there is no race, only a shared journey, and so the end of comparison is the beginning of peace. It is the realization that there is nothing to prove, nothing to defend, nothing to achieve to be worthy. You are not incomplete, you are in process. You are not behind, you are unfolding. The only true measure of progress is how deeply you can rest in awareness, how gently you can hold yourself and others. To stop comparing is to stop chasing happiness in the reflections of others, and to find it where it has always been, in the stillness of your own being. You no longer run toward mirrors. You look directly at the light that shines through all of them. That light is your essence. It has no rival, no equal, and no need to be measured. If this reflection is helping you recognize your own path as sacred and unique, remember to subscribe to the channel and continue this journey of Buddhist wisdom and awakening, where each step brings you closer to the peace that no comparison can ever touch. Finding happiness in stillness. The art of simply being. There is a quiet truth that has echoed through every Buddhist teaching, a truth so simple that the restless human mind often overlooks it. Peace is not something you find through movement, but through stillness. The greatest joy, the most profound happiness, and the deepest freedom are not discovered in achieving, acquiring, or even understanding. They are found in the state of being. Yet this is the hardest truth for the modern person to accept. We are conditioned to equate life with motion, progress, and effort. We measure our worth by what we do, not by what we are. To just be seems lazy, unproductive, even meaningless. But in the silence of being, beyond the noise of thought and the pursuit of goals, there is a presence that contains everything, and in that presence there is peace beyond understanding. In Buddhism, this realization is expressed through meditation, the practice of returning again and again to stillness, to the breath, to awareness itself. Meditation is not an escape from life, but a return to it. It is the act of remembering what we have always been beneath the layers of distraction and desire. The Buddha taught that all suffering arises because the mind is constantly running from pain, running toward pleasure, running in search of meaning, running away from silence. But when you stop running, something miraculous happens. The world stops chasing you. You sit, you breathe, and you begin to notice the simple miracle of existence. The mind storms calm, and a clear sky appears. You see that the peace you were chasing was always here, waiting in the background of every moment. Stillness does not mean the absence of sound or activity. It is the inner quiet that remains even when the world is noisy. It is the space in which all experience happens. You can be walking, eating, or working, and still be in touch with stillness. The key is not in stopping movement, but in discovering the unmoving awareness beneath it. In the same way that the ocean's depth remains calm even when the surface waves crash, the essence of your being remains untouched by the noise of the mind. To realize this is to awaken. The modern mind resists stillness because it thrives on distraction. It is addicted to stimulation. Every moment of silence feels like a void it must fill with words, thoughts, or screens. Yet that void is not empty. It is full of presence. The mind fears stillness because stillness reveals its illusion of control. When you stop and simply observe, you see that thoughts arise and pass on their own. You are not thinking, thoughts are happening. Emotions come and go like clouds. Sensations shift without your command. You begin to see that you are not the doer, but the awareness in which all doing occurs. This realization is the beginning of freedom. The fear of stillness dissolves, and in its place arises a quiet joy, the joy of resting in your true nature. The Buddha described this state as sati, mindfulness, or the remembering of being. To be mindful is to be fully here, fully aware, without resistance or grasping. When you are mindful, you are not chasing happiness, because happiness is already present in the act of awareness itself. You do not need to escape your thoughts or change your emotions. You simply observe them, and in observation, they lose their power to disturb you. Awareness purifies by its presence, not by effort. The more you rest in awareness, the lighter life becomes. You discover that you can live with joy even amid chaos because your peace no longer depends on circumstances. The stillness Buddhism points to is not dull or lifeless. It is vibrant, alive, overflowing with energy. It is the pulse of life itself, the silence from which every sound is born. In deep stillness, you sense the interconnectedness of all things. You feel the life in every leaf, every breath, every heartbeat. You realize that nothing is separate, that existence itself is a single living being expressing through countless forms. When you touch that unity, loneliness disappears. You no longer seek connection because you see that you were never disconnected. Every movement, every event, every person becomes part of the same dance of being. This stillness is not reserved for monks or mystics. It belongs to everyone. You do not need to retreat to a mountain or temple to find it. It is here, now, behind your next breath, beneath your next thought. The problem is not that stillness is far away, it is that the mind is too noisy to notice it. That is why practice is essential. Not to attain stillness, but to remember it. Each moment of mindfulness, each conscious breath, is a doorway back to being. The more you walk through that doorway, the more natural stillness becomes. Eventually, it stops being a practice and becomes your way of living. Happiness in stillness is not about escaping the world, but seeing it clearly. When you are still inside, you perceive life without distortion. You no longer interpret every event through the lens of desire and fear. You see things as they are, not as you wish them to be. This clarity brings a deep contentment. You realize that the world does not need to change for you to be at peace. The birds still sing, the seasons still turn. People still act according to their nature, and you are simply here, witnessing it all. The mind stops fighting with reality, and life becomes simple again. The ego, however, cannot survive this simplicity. It constantly seeks complexity to maintain its sense of importance. It says, you must do something, you must achieve something, you must become someone. But in stillness, you see through the ego's illusion. You realize that the self you have been trying to improve and protect is just a collection of thoughts, memories, and identifications. Beneath that, there is only awareness, vast, silent, unchanging. When you rest in that awareness, fear dissolves because there is nothing left to defend. You are not a fragment of the universe trying to survive. You are the universe itself, awake to its own existence. This realization transforms your relationship with time. The restless mind lives in the past and future, regretting what was, worrying about what will be. Stillness pulls you back into the present, where life actually happens. In the present moment, there are no problems. There is only experience, the sound of breath, the warmth of sunlight, the weight of the body. When you live here, time loses its power over you. You no longer rush or wait. You simply move with the rhythm of being. The Buddha described this state as the timeless now. It is not a moment in time, but the background of all moments. It is eternity disguised as this instant. Stillness also heals. The body, like the mind, needs rest to renew itself. When you stop struggling, the nervous system relaxes, the breath deepens, and the natural intelligence of the body begins to restore balance. Emotional wounds begin to surface and dissolve in the light of awareness. You see that healing does not require analysis or control. It requires space. Stillness provides that space. In silence, the heart finds room to release its pain. Forgiveness arises naturally, not because you force it, but because you no longer need to carry the burden of resistance. One of the most beautiful effects of stillness is that it awakens compassion. When the mind quiets, the boundaries between me and you soften. You feel the suffering of others as your own, not through pity, but through understanding. Compassion flows effortlessly because it is the natural fragrance of awareness. The more still you become, the more loving you become, not because you are trying to be good, but because you see clearly that all beings are part of the same being. This compassion is fearless, boundless, and unconditional. It does not depend on agreement or similarity. It embraces everything, even what the mind once rejected. Stillness also reveals the impermanence of all things, anicca. When you are quiet and present, you can watch how everything changes moment by moment. Thoughts arise and vanish, sensations appear and fade, emotions bloom and dissolve. Even the sense of I comes and goes like a wave. At first, this realization can be unsettling. The mind clings to permanence because it fears death, but as awareness deepens, impermanence becomes beautiful. You see that life's transience is what makes it precious. Every breath is a gift because it will never return. Every sunrise, every encounter, every tear is a fleeting expression of eternity. When you see this, gratitude fills your heart. You stop taking life for granted. You cherish each moment because you know it will pass. And that very passing is the essence of beauty. The Buddha taught that enlightenment is not something added to your life, but the removal of illusion. Stillness is the tool that dissolves illusion. When the waves of thought settle, the water becomes clear, and you see reality as it is. You see that you were never separate, never lacking, never broken. The search for happiness ends because the seeker disappears. There is only awareness, open, luminous, and free. This is what the Buddha called nirvana, not a place or a state to be reached, but the extinguishing of the fires of desire, aversion, and delusion. In stillness, those fires die out naturally. You do not need to put them out, you simply stop feeding them. As you integrate this understanding into daily life, you find that happiness no longer depends on conditions. You can experience sadness, pain, or uncertainty, and yet remain at peace. The waves still move, but the depth of the ocean remains still. You live in the world, but the world no longer lives in you. This is the secret of true freedom. You become like a mirror, reflecting everything, clinging to nothing. Joy and sorrow come and go, but awareness remains the same. You are free because you are no longer identified with the changing, but with the changeless. The practice of finding happiness in stillness is not about retreating from life. It is about entering it more fully. When you are still, you can listen deeply to others, to nature, to the subtle whispers of intuition. You act not from reaction, but from wisdom. Decisions arise spontaneously from clarity rather than confusion. Life becomes simpler, more graceful. You stop trying to force outcomes and begin to trust the natural unfolding of things. You realize that existence itself knows what it is doing. The same intelligence that guides the planets and the seasons guides your path as well. Stillness also teaches patience. The restless mind wants immediate results. Awareness knows that everything ripens in its own time. When you live in stillness, you stop rushing your growth. You no longer judge your progress or compare your journey. You understand that awakening unfolds like the opening of a flower, naturally in its own season. This patience brings peace because it frees you from the tyranny of urgency. You rest in the knowing that everything is as it should be, even when it does not match your plans. There will still be times when you forget, when the noise of the world pulls you away from stillness, but that too is part of the path. The return to stillness is not a failure, it is the practice itself. Every time you notice you're lost in thought and return to awareness, you strengthen the connection to your true nature. Over time, the gaps between noise and silence grow shorter, and stillness becomes the background of your life. You carry it with you everywhere, in work, in relationships, in solitude. It becomes your refuge, your home. In the end, the path of stillness leads to a profound realization. You were never seeking happiness at all. You were seeking yourself, the self that exists before thoughts, before names, before stories. When you rest in that self, you discover that happiness is not an experience, but a state of being. It is the quiet joy of existence itself, the peace of knowing that nothing is missing, nothing needs to be added, and nothing needs to be taken away. You are whole, complete, and eternal in this moment. So the final lesson of Buddhism in the search for happiness is the simplest and most difficult of all. Stop searching, sit down, breathe, be still. The truth you are chasing is not in the future. It is here, now, in the silence that has never left you. Let the world spin. Let thoughts come and go. Let life unfold as it will. You do not need to hold it. You do not need to fix it. You only need to be present for it. In that presence, you will discover what the Buddha discovered under the Bodhi tree. That awakening is not about becoming something new, but about realizing what has always been. If this reflection has helped you sense that peace within yourself, remember to subscribe to the channel and continue walking this path of awareness, stillness, and awakening. A journey not toward happiness, but into the heart of being itself, where happiness was waiting all along.